Good evening, ladies. Here we are to paint space 9 on our 12 days of Christmas sampler. We've hit that last line. We're almost there. We're rounding the bend, third base and headed towards home, I think. This evening's space is a simple one. So this is going to be a short little time together. But here we are, space 9, 9 ladies dancing. So we've just got to paint a pair of ballet shoes. We're going to put down some music in our background, paint up our shoes, and do a little bit of lettering. And that's all we have for this space. So it's a little small, sweet space, but I'm so excited about the ephemera. I know every time we get together, I have excitement over the papers. Um, and so even though this is a small space, it's exciting, and I hope that it's going to be extra fun for you too when you know the story behind what we're working with. So opening up your little packet for day 9, what you have inside, you have some music paper, we have a little snippet, and we have some beads. If you look at the finished piece, and actually the one that I just held up here, you don't see any beads on here. But as I was working through this after the fact and getting everything packed up, we did use, remember, we had some little kind of rose colored beads on this space. We had green beads over on this space. We had a little black bead for the swan's eye, which I forgot to tell you to put on last week. I hope you figured that out. So then continuing down, we have button, we have snap, we have hooks, we have cord. And so I felt like we needed something down here in this corner. So how about some little tiny beads to become the latches on her ballet slippers? So what's all the excitement about? The music snippet that you have is from a book called Echoes of the North. And I have it here to show you. This is from 1907. And you can see it's Scandinavian composers, piano music. And here it is, Swedish maybe, fourth edition. And so you have a couple of lines from a page in this book. That's not the exciting part. The exciting part is that originally, when I was going through my books and trying to decide on what I wanted to give you for this, I was trying to find, I knew we were going to do music because it was ladies dancing, but I was trying to find music that was maybe specifically some type of dance music. We've used hymnal pages before. That didn't seem appropriate for 9 ladies dancing. And so one of the things I had was this big book, Songs from the North. The other one was Echoes of the North, where your book came from, or your paper came from. This is Songs from the North, okay? And this is published in 1895 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And as I was opening this up, I was looking through the types of music that we have in here, and I opened up to the introduction, just getting a feel of the history of the book, right? Because 1895, so it's Victorian. So let's see what the story is. The very first paragraph I read says, "This collection of songs from the North is dedicated to the memory of Jenny Lind, the immortal interpreter of our Northern melodies and the master works of music in general, as a token of gratitude." Jenny Lind, does that ring a bell with anyone? Are any of you fans of Greatest Showman, perchance? Do you remember the story of P.T. Barnum leaving his endeavor in the circus to travel for a time with a singer who was none other than Jenny Lind? That's based on real history, that the movie and that part of the movie. And so in this introduction, there's a lovely kind of story of her life and how she ended up coming to America. And then even in the end of this, it talks about her time that she spent traveling with P.T. Barnum. And for her part, she was doing all of her concerts as charity. And so the very first ticket, let's see, the first ticket that sold in the city, and remember, this is in the 1800s. someone paid $625 for. That's nothing to sneeze at today. I've never paid $600 to go to a concert. Um, and I probably never will. But this is in the 1800s because she was so well known. Somebody did that and as a donation to her charity. But anyway, so I couldn't bring myself to cut this book up after having her story printed in here and knowing that this was dedicated to her and the story behind it. I went down all kinds of rabbit holes, learning more about her. And so she was a dancer, she was a singer. And so I, I had to come up with something else for music because I didn't want to cut this book up. And lo and behold, I had the 1907 book that I just showed you, Echoes of the North, and it has a lot of the same composers and the same songs from this one, which are songs that she sang. So there's a little tie into that. So when you're showing people your project, now you can talk about The Greatest Showman and the tie-in to some of the music that you have here. Your Ladies' Home Journal snippet is from 1900, and then the glass beads are from the 1940s. Okay, so now with all that out of the way, and I felt like I had maybe a little freedom to do that tonight because our paint time is so short for this project. So I hope you enjoyed that. I have been bursting at the seams to tell you all about that. So what do we have for prep? We needed to just coat our music paper with matte medium. Our little book snippet or magazine snippet, we coated with matte medium and then also a coat of gesso. And then of course, nothing with the beads yet. So what we're going to do here is take our music snippet, and we're going to put just a light coat of gesso over it also, but not until we get it put down on our space, because we're actually going to be muting some of our space at the same time. So all you're going to do is decide which area of the music you want to use. I'm always, by now partial to having that signature on there. So I'm going to bring mine right over to the edge, and you're just going to go ahead and measure your space. And actually it might be easier to line it up this way. Get a little crease here. And I'm just tearing mine because I like to have those kind of rough edges, but you can cut them with scissors if you want to. Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to go right along my bottom edge. And I could even trim mine a little more narrow here on the top. So I'm just folding and then tearing. And we're going to put this down with matte medium. Okay, so this is going to go on this space. Okay, now we want just one line from this one. So again, just fold and tear. Okay, so see how we've got just one line there, two lines here, and so it gives us that space in between. Of course, our shoes are going to overlap that. So let me get these bits out of the way, and I will be working in my book. So your music paper should be down on your space. Mine is in my book. We're good to go. Let me just get my scraps out of the way. Am I keeping these scraps? Well, of course I am. Because at some point, I'm going to be working on maybe an artist trading card or a Rolodex card. Girls, if you are in the Creative Art Workshop group, you've probably seen me mention the Rolodex. We are going to be doing a Rolodex project for 2026 just in that group. So start hunting down your Rolodex now. It's going to be a lot of fun. Very lots of creative goodness to come for that. Okay, so now we're going to grab our ladies home journal snippet. I'm going to just zoom in here. So we're just going to transfer the slippers on, and I actually turned the paper this way so that the text was vertical instead of horizontal on this one, just for something a little bit different. You don't have to do that if you don't want to do that. And normally I'm all about, let's look for, some nice words to tie in, but the shoes are so tiny that the only place you're going to really see anything is maybe on the toe. So if you want to take a moment and scan your paper and see if you have anything that maybe pertains to something Christmassy, faith, hope, love, joy, peace, um, something like that on there, or if you have anything that somehow would refer to dance. Um, but like I said, really this right slipper that has the pointed toe is probably the only place you're going to see anything. But let's see. I'm going to go ahead and I'll see what I can see. The true love gave to you. The ladies dancing. Oh, gave. No, that doesn't fit. Okay, I don't think I'm seeing anything that's really standing out to me. Friends is kind of nice, but it doesn't really pertain to the song. I don't have 9. Okay, well, I'm just going to transfer right where I'm at. How's that? Every little piece can't have a deeper hidden meaning. I mean, if we look hard enough, then maybe I could turn over the backside and see. I did briefly look at the backside to decide which of half of the paper I wanted to use, and the other side was another story. Had a lot of slang in it though, so I decided not to use that one. Okay, so we're just transferring the outside and the inside. Make sure I can see everything on here. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with Coral Blush. So this is that same mix that we used on the berries on our second space. I'm going to put out, and you just need literally a drop, okay? Because we're going to thin this with matte medium, and it's a little tiny bit goes a long way. So into the Coral Blush, I'm going to mix a little dot of Country Red. Again, just a tiny bit. And this is not so much about changing the color because we want this pink to go on as a very light pink. But we're going to be using Country Red to shade the shoes to tie in with the other red pieces. And so we're just really putting a little drop of the Country Red in to kind of force our colors to come together so we can kind of marry the palette a little bit this way. So it's just to tone it, okay? Just to shift the color ever so slightly so that when we put the Country Red on, the Country Red goes. So that's all I'm going to do, that tiny little bit, and then I'm going to grab some matte medium on my brush and stir that in. So I'm basically tinting matte medium at this point. And then I'm going to just get my brush loaded with some matte medium also so it's not dry. And as always, because we're going to cut these out, don't worry about staying in the line so much. We do not want to get any paint on the inside of area of the shoe because this is bare paper. And we're just going to be floating lamp black in there. So we don't want pink in that inside area. But if you go outside of the lines on the outer edges, it's fine. And I'm just going to take a little swipe here to make sure my color is a nice light pink. Okay, so I'm actually going to pick up just a little more matte medium, I think. So a little more transparent. There we go. See the difference that just the matte medium made? This one versus this one, a little bit lighter. Okay, so we're going to just go ahead and base coat our shoes. And they're so tiny. You're just going to, once around, you're going to be all set here. Again, just being careful on the insides, not so much the outsides. So I'm going around the inside first, just to be sure I don't get any paint in there. And then filling in against the outer edges. Okay. And then working deepest from our deepest point out, we're going to pick up lamp black on the toe of a little angular brush. Again, and as always, loaded in matte medium and just a tiny little bit of color. Blend, blend, blend. So we're going to be floating this against the toe end and the heel end, and then we're going to walk the toe end up and the heel end down. So if you think about it, when you look in a shoe, this center part where the middle of your foot is, you see, but then your toes go down inside. We don't see down in there, and the heel comes up. So that's nice and dark. So that's all we're doing here. So I'm going to float against the toe end first, and then just start to bring that color up, and it's going to be very transparent, and then it's going to just kind of disappear on us, which is good. And I will go over that one more time to get my toe end even darker, but it's always better to have to repeat than get too heavy right off the bat. And the toe end of this one is just a little, just like you're pushing a little C stroke in there. And then just gently walk that color up. Again, letting it get lighter and lighter and lighter in the middle. Okay. Looking a little strange right now, but it will all come together. And again, I'm using quite a small angular brush. This is a 1/4 inch angular brush, so that's why I'm reloading so often. Just very careful to maintain that shape and then soften it out. And you could mop this with a little mop even if you need to. And dark against the heel. Bring the collar down. Okay, so that's looking good. I'm going to come in one more time and just go against the curves once more to get those even a little darker, but I don't want to carry that this repeated flow. I don't want to carry up too far because I want to keep that soft color that I already have down. I just want the deep areas to be a little darker. And then barely there, paint on my brush. I'm just pulling along the sides, barely tinting that paper. So that's our first step. Now on the pink part of our shoes, I'm going to pick up again with the matte medium, and this time we're going to pick up white, and we're basically floating against the darks that we just put on. So again, I'm going to really blend my brush out. So let me hold them this way. So my toe area I'm going to float against the black, and I'm going to really pull this down. Remember, we want our shoes to be nice and pink. So with the transparent color that we're getting out of the white, it's going over the base coat and it's keeping the color shining through. So we're basically just doing heel and toe on these also. Now we're going to put our country red on. This is going to define the edges, and this is where it's going to all make sense. So we need all of our parts on these tiny little shoes. So matte medium on my brush, and again, very well blended out. So now I'm going to go against, again, heel and toe. Now we're doing outer edges, okay? So I'm going to start right along the edge and then float down toward the back heel and just start to come up the other side so that that defines my back. Okay. Again, it's all about that transparent color that we get with the matte medium, so that even this float is just layering on the pink and it's developing more of in the pink family than the red family. So now we're going to do the toe of the same shoe, and again I'm starting on the side and I'm just letting my brush glide along the chisel, and it's just defining the edge without really bringing color up in. And then as soon as I hit the curve here, I'm going to add pressure so that I get a tint on the toe. Okay. Reload. Make sure I have my matte medium in. Same thing on this one. I'm going to start just down from the curve. Tint that back heel. And pull around the corner until I'm back on my chisel again. And then the toe. And I just want to pull my chisel along this edge just to define it, because the other edges I really did okay getting. And that's all it is, you guys. That's all it is. So we're going to go ahead and cut these out. So this shoe is sort of facing us. This shoe is kind of like a pointed toe. Thank goodness for these wonderful little, I hope you're using your little detail scissors, because really they are the magic of cutting these little pieces. Okay, there's my pointed toe. And again, I'm working in my little book. You are on your canvas. So let me bring this finished one back up again. So you see how light the shoes are. If you have a very busy space, now mine is not. I did go ahead and get some of the pattern in here, but I don't have a lot of color on. So I don't have to worry about really muting any of my background. But if your space is too busy or too bright, you can go ahead and mute the whole space If not, just mute your music paper. So I don't really feel like I need to do much muting of my space itself. So I'm just going to bring some gesso down. And since I don't have other colors going on, I'm going to take a second and just drag some. Remember where I had my uneven spots? So I'm going to drag a little gesso here where my paper didn't quite meet up correctly. And maybe up in here. And since I've got music and music, I'm going to mask a little bit of this music so I get the focus on the border that we just added. And then if you dry this, remember to keep your heat far away from your canvas so that you don't lift into that background paper. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and just lay the line drawing on. So if you just pay attention to where your word 9, this one is my pencil drawing. I had an inked one here. All right, let me use my inked line drawing so it's a little easier for you to see. So what I'm saying is position your word 9 first, and that will guide you as far as where the ribbons and where your shoe's going to go. So for example, knowing that I'm going to have my 9 down here, I can just lift my paper and get my shoes in the perfect positions. Not that we don't have the freedom to move them around a bit, but that tells me where they need to go. And I'm going to carefully hold on those. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and get my matte medium going, and we'll adhere these down. So when I want to keep things in an exact spot, I will hold the pieces down with one finger and I will put them down half at a time. So I'm going to use my left hand to hold the little toes of the shoes. I'm going to slide my brush beneath the paper and just give it a second to get its hold, and then carefully just lift from the front and then underneath. Okay, and then smooth my space all out. And then our ribbons are going to be country red, thinned with a little bit of water because we're going to use our liner brush for this. If you feel like you want to transfer your design, you're going to have to obviously give this a moment to dry, okay? If you're good with just freehanding your ribbons on, you have your line art, and so you can, even though it's still a little wet, you can just gently kind of lay it on to get an idea of where your ribbon begins. And we're going to pull loops first. So I'm going to start on the tip of my brush and I'll add a little pressure as I make the curves so that my ribbon goes from thin to thick. And I have not figured out a really good way for you to see this kind of detail. Press and then back up to the tip. There's a little dot for the knot. There is a little thin connecting line coming from the knot down to each shoe. Very, very thin. And then we have the tails to the ribbon. And then you can just let these fall however you'd like. I kind of made a little twist on one side. If you want to bring them up into a little curly Q, you can. And then we're going to crisscross laces. And these are going to kind of curve up because it's the idea of a foot being in the shoe. So we're not going to keep them straight like this. We're going to curve kind of a little detail, but it adds a lot. So I'm going to curve, and then I'm going to curve this way. Okay, so matching everything up here, making sure that my word 9 is nice and straight. I'm actually going to come down just a little bit with mine so I'm centered in that space. And I know on the canvas, it's a little harder to transfer because you don't have that firm surface like what I have here. But if you put something underneath, like if you set your canvas on a hardback book, that really helps. Okay, so we're going to ink it, and I'm using my pigment pen for this. And just remember, our upstrokes are thin, our downstrokes are thick. So thin up, let me zoom it back in here. And then thick down, thin up, thick down, thin up, thick down, thin up, thick down. Okay. And we have our little darling little beads to put on. I know they're so tiny, right? But look how sweet this is going to be. So don't take them out of here until you're ready to go, girls. You don't want to lose them. I'm going to get my tacky glue and I'm going to put a little dollop right on my palette so I have something to work with. And I'm using this little skewer so I can get a little small point of glue. I could have grabbed one of my little pins, that would have worked. You could use like the tip of a mechanical pencil. We want something really tiny though. So I'm just going to put a little dot of glue at the very, very end of each of these little crisscross laces. And I'm letting it be out into the shoe a little bit. Okay, I'm going to do one shoe at a time. Then I want 4 beads. I think I'm going to use my little tweezers. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the tip of my finger. I'm going to get my tiny little tweezers here and just set that into the glue very carefully. I gave you a few extra beads just in case. They make those little beading tools that have the waxy tip. If you have one of those, you could use that and be just golden, right? I'm going to just set them on my surface so I don't have to keep worrying about dropping them out of my hands. And then I can just scoot them over. Oh, come on now. Isn't that cute? Look at the difference between these two shoes, and you tell me that's not cute. Aw, that's so cute. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing on the other one. Oh, see, that just makes me so happy. Little glue dot, little glue dot, little glue dot, little glue dot. Don't drop your beads. I'm saying this to myself. Get out 4. Set it in the glue. Set it in the glue. Oh, get it in the glue. The one in my package. Oh, that's so cute. Okay, there's our 9 ladies dancing space. And I know my scale is off because I'm doing it in the book and I've been doing little extra fillers. But let me show you on this one. I don't have beads on this one, but here's my finished. And so in reality, the bow went up into the bottom underneath that swan space, which is really pretty. That's a wrap on this one, short and sweet. And I look forward to seeing, I want to say seeing you, but we're doing this all recorded, which I'm not loving. So maybe when we do space 12, we can have a get together for the last hurrah, if we can figure out how to do that. Thanks, ladies. I'll see you again very soon. Bye.